Welcome to your Trig Survival Guide. Today we're going to verify a trig identity. We'll look at sin x tangent x equals 1 over cosine x minus cosine x. So we'll use quite a few strategies as we tackle this identity, and we know that before we begin, it's a great idea to strategize and also to decide which side we're going to work on. And we usually like to choose the more complex side. Remember, you can only manipulate one side. That's one of the cardinal rules for proving a trig identity. And so for this identity, it looks like the right-hand side may be the best to work on. We have two terms that we could then combine and simplify into one term, and we could see if that helps us turn the right side into what we want, which will be the left side, sin x tan x. In terms of our strategy, like I said, we probably want to combine these two terms into a single term, getting a common denominator, and then we'll look for some substitutions and other manipulations that we can make, maybe looking out for some big trig identities, maybe a Pythagorean identity. I can kind of see that forming, thinking about a common denominator. And so I think that's a great starting place, and let's go ahead and start working on this right-hand side. So let's draw a vertical bar. That way we aren't tempted to work on that left-hand side. We cannot change that at all. And I like to, instead of rewriting it, represent it as LS or left side. Okay, so we said we want to try first getting a common denominator. So of course right now, cosine is like cosine over 1, and we need a common denominator. That'll be cosine x. So all we have to do is multiply that second term by cosine x over cosine x. It's essentially multiplying by 1, but just in a way that manipulates the term a little bit. Okay, so this term will turn into cosine squared x, that's cosine times cosine, over cosine x. And now we can write that on the next line. And let's go ahead and combine this into a single term since we have the common denominator. So we have 1 minus cosine squared x all over cosine x. Now let's pause to assess. Looking at the numerator, that's usually where we see things happening when we get a common denominator. We should recognize the numerator, the whole numerator, is actually part of our Pythagorean identity, cosine squared plus sine squared equals 1. It's just a rearranged form of it. So here's cosine squared plus sine squared equals 1. And because this is one of our big trig identities, we can rearrange it. So simply subtract cosine from both sides, and you'll see that sine squared is equal to 1 minus cosine squared. So let's replace the 1 minus cosine squared in our identity with sine squared. That'll be our next step. So we have the left side equals, and we'll rewrite it with sine squared in our numerator, substituting in for that 1 minus cosine squared. Again, that came from our Pythagorean identity, and it's still over cosine. Okay, let's pause again, and let's look at the left side this time. We know we're trying to get sin x times tangent x. And we basically have that. Remember that sine squared is just sine times sine. So if we were actually to take a step to write that out, we have a term that has sine x times sine x. We can write this cosine x just underneath one of them, and technically the sine would be over 1. And so now I think it's easy to see we have that sine x multiplied by, if we use a quotient identity here for sine over cosine, we have tangent x. So our final step, I like to write out the whole thing just so it looks very pretty and finished. We have sine x tangent x equals sine x times tangent x. And we have proved our trig identity. Be sure to check the video description. I'll post a link there so you can access more examples. Some of the videos will take a more detailed look at one strategy in particular. And remember that this is a skill that just takes practice and strategizing. And with each problem you complete, you'll get better and better for the next one. So keep it up, and thanks for watching.